The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
Who's number one? Tech is. Georgia Tech.
So we're going to start integrating sports ideas, whether the ideation's from us or whether from the students. We'll start integrating that, so maybe there's some startups that we can kind of pull into that space.
That's Doug Allvine, the Assistant Athletic Director for Innovation at Georgia Tech, where they hope a hub of innovation will be. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. We will check in with the latest incubator at one of the leading tech schools in the country and then take a look down the street at the Falcons, who might not be heading toward a winning season on the field, but off of it, they're killing it. And speaking of number one, that is going to be determined this weekend in Tuscaloosa when LSU plays Alabama. And if you are bullish on either side, you might want to hear how you could buy your way into the national championship game. But let's start this week in Atlanta, Georgia, where the future is now. Go down to Atlanta and you'll see one of the most forward-thinking stadiums in the United States, the home of the Atlanta Falcons. But they're not done trying to catch up to the rest of the league in a lot of the forward-thinking spaces that we follow here. Eric Jackson from the Atlanta Business Journal joins us now. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian.
So where is Atlanta trying to catch up?
You can have everything, all the data and all the tech, but if it's not being applied correctly, and maybe it is, but it's not showing up on Sunday. So, the story came out this week. The timing wasn't great, but but yeah, man. I mean, they're doing some really cool things, man. I mean, they are trying to stay at the top of this data arms race, as they say. And yeah, man. I mean, they really built out their tech department. I mean, about a year and a half ago, they put everything under one roof, right? So video analytics, their app development, it's all under one roof now. So, they're being more efficient than ever. I think, there's other teams in the league that are doing the same, but I think where the Falcons are probably standing out is just, the money that's being invested, because they have one of the bigger tech departments. They're about at 12, 13 members, and if you look around the league, I don't see one that's that big. I've seen ones maybe, and there's always, it's hard to tell exactly because, there might be that intern or a couple interns that aren't being accounted for, but you look around the team staffs and others, I don't see one the size of that. So they're definitely investing in that.
And what were they trying to accomplish?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just like, I think it's kind of just like the other teams in the league, man, just trying to use the technology and data to supplement their decisions, not just from the GM, but from the coach's standpoint too. I was kind of talking to Thomas Dimitroff, the Falcons GM, and he was kind of mentioning how it's kind of still 70-30 for him, 70% kind of relying on tape and, the football brains aspect. But that 30% still a pretty big chunk. And it's actually, he even mentioned it's moving more to 60-40. So I think it's just interesting now how, as football goes on, you can't ignore those numbers anymore, that data. So, I think you're almost behind the league now if you're just, you're not even incorporating that into the game plan. So Falcons are just trying to stay ahead of that, man, and their app development department's doing really cool. I think it's cool how now for like a GM, you don't have to, you don't have to get the whiteboard out and the pings and the dry erase markers to figure things out. Now, you can pull it up on your phone and review film while you're in transit on an airplane, or, you don't have to pull out the clunky laptop anymore to try to look at these things. So
let me go back to what you said about the general manager, Thomas Dimitroff. because he is considered one of the more forward-thinking general managers in general. Did he feel like that the team was losing their edge by not using more data?
Well, yeah, I think more so forward-thinking, right? Because, when he got there 10 years ago, the Falcons were one of the first teams to start the player tracking data, and the NFL actually gave him a little slap on the wrist because, they were so new at the time to be tracking this, using this data. So it was a slap on the wrist, but it was kind of, it was in good nature, right? Competitive nature. Because now, obviously, it's commonplace now to be using the player tracking data, but the Falcons are really ahead of it at that time. And, Mike Smith, the head coach at the time, was a little slower on it, right? An older coach, but, Thomas gives Dan Quinn a lot of credit for being more forward-thinking and, willing to use those numbers to supplement. So, but obviously, you can only, like I said before when I got on the call, it doesn't matter if, if it's not showing up on the field, but it's definitely, it definitely helps, right? I mean, to make those decisions. Because you kind of put it in like 4 buckets. It was like, you got the pre-acquisition, the post-acquisition, kind of that return to play, and then the opposition, right? What are you using to, against the opponents? So it's kind of in those four buckets there, how they're kind of using it from the GM's perspective, Thomas's perspective.
Yeah, the computers still can't replicate covering Mike Thomas or taking a Khalil Mack hit yet. That's the one thing they can't quite do. Exactly. Yeah.
I think the Vikings get a lot of credit, and Cowboys have obviously built that crazy facility, and even the Rams, as far as scheming goes, they get a lot of credit. But the Falcons have to be considered right there too, man. So
Eric Jackson from the Atlanta Business Journal. Hey, thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thanks, Graham. I appreciate it, man.
Up next, Doug Allvine at Georgia Tech, who hopes to be an institution that leads in the sports tech field. This is the Future Sport Podcast. There is a lot happening in the sports tech space in the city of Atlanta. We talked about what's happening with the Falcons, and now let's focus down the street at Georgia Tech, where they have launched a sports innovation initiative, and joining us now is their Assistant Athletic Director for Innovation, Doug Allvine. How are you, Doug?
Great, thank you.
What are you guys doing? Tell us, kind of give us the above ground picture of what's happening.
Okay, so real high level. Obviously, Georgia Tech, one of the top-ranked public colleges in the country and one of the leading research universities in the United States. And our big focus was on technology down here at Georgia Tech. And when our new athletic director came on board a couple of years ago, he and I sat down and we kind of brainstormed on how we could leverage that and make that a differentiator for not just Georgia Tech, but for Atlanta. And so we felt that we could bring that technology, innovation, research, and apply it to sports and kind of establish Atlanta as the world leader in sports technology innovation.
So
at a high level.
How far along are you on that process?
The first thing that we did was we basically wanted to whiteboard out what sports innovation was, because depending on who you are and what areas you're focusing on, you may view that as sports. So that was kind of good. When Todd put me in this role, and then basically there was a little message that was sent out across campus. The really neat thing was right away I got interest from people across campus in different areas. So Office of Industry Collaboration, Georgia Tech Research Institute. There's another group called IPAT, Institute of People and Technology. The Venture Prize, which is a venture group. So there were just different groups across campus that wanted to get involved. So we kind of sat down and said, well, before we go forward with the strategy, let's figure out what sports innovation is. And so we kind of outlined it real high level into 3 kind of categories that at least fit well for us. So one of them is athletic performance, and that can be the athlete health and well-being, injury prevention, diagnostics, management. That could roll into strength and conditioning, apparel, equipment and design, safety, that type of things. But then also in that athletic performance side, there's this huge shift in interest right now in analytics. So combining that with wearables, wearable sensing technology and data collection capture, and then using that data to assess, analyze, and improve performance. So that's one area. And then the other big area, there's two other ones. The other one is fan engagement, right? So with the different age segmentations going along, we need to understand that there's different segmentations, and are we engaging those people, those age groups in different areas? That's also could include communications, sales. So how are we interacting with the fan? And then third one, which is probably the least attractive, but maybe the biggest opportunity, is operations. So that could be ticketing, game day operations, parking, security, concessions, ingress, egress, venue management. So at a real high level, we had to first define what sports innovation was. And then we said, okay, so how do we take that forward? And so I can keep talking, but I interrupt, but I'll just basically, we basically decided at a high level, Todd and I, we want to establish Atlanta as the world leader in sports innovation technology. And I kind of was like, well, let's talk about what the big whys are, right? So clearly Georgia Tech, with our research and our partnerships and our industry collaboration, there's a lot of opportunities for Georgia Tech. And then secondly, we do not want to forget the students, right? So there's great opportunity for sports innovation with students. One, from a test bed standpoint, so applying the technologies, but two, from a research standpoint. So we've started pulling in students to help us research sports innovation ideas. And then relationship-wise, this has been a very attractive component. So I mentioned earlier, once we made this position, the Institute kind of reached out, and we've formed really good collaborations with the Institute, but then we've expanded that out to the pro teams, the Falcons, obviously, the Hawks, the Braves, Atlanta United, Atlanta Dream, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We've worked with all of those different groups. And then you were talking about the Falcons just down the road. If you look towards our east, there's all of these innovation Fortune 100 companies that are putting their headquarters or innovation headquarters right attached to the Georgia Tech campus. So combining Georgia Tech with Georgia Tech athletics and then bringing in the sports teams in Atlanta, we've got something that could really be special.
Let's talk about wearables, analytics, and all of that stuff. This is commonplace around the country. What do you think would differentiate what you guys are trying to do in that realm?
Right now, each sport has partnered with various wearable technologies to help them analyze their individual performance, team performance, things like that. It turns out there's a really good website. I think it's called Flex Wearables at Georgia Tech, and there's at least 40 faculty that are part of this group that have different technologies that they're using. And so, again, they haven't applied it to sports as like we would like to do. So to some extent they have, but they've applied it to other areas. And so clearly there's a good opportunity here to bring that into athletics and use that. So it can be everything from, accelerometers where you're tracking movement and jumping and things like that to, health and cardio tracking or player tracking. It really depends, but we haven't really taken advantage of that yet. Like I said, we have bought into a lot of the really high-end technologies that are out there. Catapult, MyVert. Those are just ones that I'm working with right now, but each team has their own, and so there's just a really good opportunity to start taking advantage of that technology and applying it to sports.
I want to talk about fan engagement for a moment. You're in an interesting city. I record from Washington. There's a similar nature there in that there's a lot of transients. A lot of people come in and out of the city. It's a young city. There's a lot of things happening there. Not everybody's from the region. And you're trying to engage with people. As you kind of move forward in how you engage with your fans, whether it's of the Georgia Tech programs or work with other teams, either locally or nationally, as they try to engage with the modern fan, what are you learning?
So there are a lot of people working this space trying to figure out, you want to engage the fans, but you don't want to distract them from the primetime event that they're focusing on. You want to be able to provide them incentives to stay engaged in different manners. So there's no formula as far as how that works. So, we have our game day app that has various functions, but there's a lot of technology that we haven't necessarily integrated yet that we're looking towards doing. But like I said, it's a broad area. Like you talked about, I mean, there's, different segmentations, and I think with the technology that we have in today's world, with the phones and iPhones or handheld phones and stuff like that, and just different technologies, I think that's an opportunity that could really help the sports continue to maintain and grow in their popularity.
Some of the schools and programs that we've talked to, they're looking at a number of these things as well, but yours seems broad, where you have all these technology companies that are moving into Atlanta. You've got forward-thinking groups like the Falcons with their stadium and all the things that are happening right down the street from you. And, of course, you are a research university, a major tech hub of research. Are you guys looking at this to benefit Georgia Tech's programs, or are you looking at this as like, we want to be an incubator for tech startups around the country?
Well, I think the answer is both. So there are a couple things that we're doing. I mean, there's a really neat entrepreneurship program within Georgia Tech called CreateX, and it is basically an entrepreneurship program that starts you from idea and basically launch where you've got a minimal viable product and you're kind of going out in the marketplace. So we're going to start integrating sports ideas, whether the ideation's from us or rather from the students. We'll start integrating that. So maybe there's some startups that we can kind of pull into that space. We're looking at building a sports performance lab that could bring in the technology not only from existing medical and assessment applications, but bring in the technology from our institute from a research standpoint, or maybe even from the outside. So we'll do screenings for our student athletes, and then based on their screenings, we'll provide various analysis that we can do to help improve and strengthen their athletic performance. So again, there's just different areas that we can bring in technology into our athletic program that I think are Georgia Tech's in the right position to do at this phase of the development.
It's interesting when you have an institution like this. It can be broad, it can be narrow. You can choose however the way you want to go. And it sounds like you guys have taken a very broad overview of all of this. And as you've started, has that narrowed to what you think are the right tracks to start off with, or has this just gotten more broad as more things have kind of fallen on your plate and you've gone, we should include that as well?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. We had a think tank the other day, and it was really broad. We had faculty from various engineering schools. We had corporations, just a couple people from Accenture. We had a couple people from Coca-Cola. And we basically went with what I originally shared with you. And the feedback was really good, but the feedback was also like, that's really broad, we need to narrow down. And so, ironically, going forward in our think tanks, we're going to break it down at least into those three areas I talked about, the performance, the fan engagement, operations, because it is a really broad space, and we do need to strategically figure out where we think we can add the most value, being Georgia Tech and the research that we can bring to the table.
It's really interesting. It's literally changing everything we've known about whether it's collegiate or professional sports. Doug Allvine is the Assistant AD of Innovation at Georgia Tech. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Up next, LSU, Alabama, and the other title-contending fans can make an RSVP to get into the title game if their team makes it. This is the Future Sport Podcast. So let's take a minute here to thank our friends at 3Advance. These guys are ranked one of the nation's top app developers, but that's not all. They've helped grow a bunch of sports tech startups like Team Builder, T-Box Tour, and In-Game Fantasy, but they're also experts in user experience, cloud APIs, and artificial intelligence. So if you're looking for a dev partner to bring your future sport tech to life, look these guys up. go to 3advance.com. They're the team to make it happen, and advance you will. That's the number 3advance.com, and tell them Future Sport sent you. People in the South need to pay attention to this week, as LSU is going to be facing Alabama for what might be the first of two meetings this year. The second could take place in the College Football Playoff. Chief Operating Officer Rob Boaz of Dibbit and the College Football Playoff RSVP program joins us now. Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm great, Bram. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Anything you'd like to say to the people of Louisiana or Alabama this week about what may be coming down the pike for them?
We're looking forward to a great game between LSU and Alabama. This should be a lot of fun. Like anything down in the South, the college football is just crazy down there. So I'm sure fans will be tuning in and looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one versus two. And who knows, maybe they'll play each other again come late December into early January, which is where you come into all of this, which with the College Football Playoff RSVP program. What is it? What does it do?
Yeah, so we have an agreement with College Football Playoff, which is a national championship game, where we offer a program for fans where they can purchase a RSVP for their favorite team. And if their favorite team makes it to the national championship game, they're guaranteed the right to purchase a face value ticket for the game. It's as simple as that. So we launched the program in August, and the prices change as the year goes. But the great part about it is it's a fan-friendly way for fans to follow their team throughout the season and know that they're going to be at the game when their team makes it.
So you could have done this. I could have done this in August. I'm an Ohio State fan. I could have done this in August and put in a reservation, and if Ohio State gets to the playoff, I could still buy a ticket.
Absolutely. So it doesn't matter when you purchase your RSVP. The prices, like I said, fluctuate based on how the season's going. So, if you'd bought in August, the Ohio State RSVP would have been a little bit cheaper than it is now. But that's the main reason is because it's a little bit more likely that Ohio State makes it to the championship game at this point in time.
And if they don't make it, what's the risk factor?
The risk factor is that you lose your money from it. So it is, if your team doesn't make it, your RSVP expires, and hopefully you just do it again next year, and then your team does make it, so that you can get tickets to the game next year.
All right, so how did you guys come up with this? What was the genesis of all of this?
The real genesis is College Football Playoff wanted a way for their fans to be able to attend the game. And, anytime you have a tournament-style championship game, you're not going to know which teams are in the game until the very end. So this way allows fans to follow along throughout the journey of their team through the season and know that they're going to be able to go to the game for face value. So that's really the main idea of why we have this program and what the value brings to consumers.
I mean, there may not be any way around this, but there's probably a lot of people that are interested in the secondary market that go, I'm just going to put in RSVPs for Alabama because they're there every year. So how do you kind of deal with the people that are doing this that aren't specific fans?
Absolutely. And we limit it to 6 RSVPs per team. So, if someone does want to go in there and do that, that is their choice. It is a marketplace. So, like anything, you can lose your money from it. So, I mean, it's a great program for fans that do want to go. And I'm sure there are some people that say, okay, well, I'm going to try it out and see what happens. And, we try to treat it as a fan-friendly thing so that, if people do want to do that, it's kind of their choice, but we're not going to police it too much.
What's the results been? What has been the feedback from people?
Yeah, so our first year operating this program was 2 years ago for the game in Atlanta, and it was a huge success from our program, mainly because that game, skyrocketed in demand, where it was Alabama versus Georgia in Atlanta. So, the secondary ticket prices shot through the roof. And a perfect example, Georgia opened the year not even ranked in the top 25. So RSVPs for them at the beginning of the year were extremely cheap. I mean, people could get in the door for $25 plus the face value of a ticket. So we've heard quite a few stories of fans saying, hey, I trusted my team and I was able to get into the game at a very reasonable price. So that's the perfect example of how our program works in success. Last year in Santa Clara, the market wasn't as high of a demand with two teams, kind of flying across country. But the one thing that we heard from our fans was, they were comfortable because they were able to lock in a price that they were comfortable with well in advance and have price certainty.
Yeah.
They kind of take the marketplace of the secondary market out of the equation in a scenario like that.
I'll let you go on this. So we've talked about this, but it's part of your company, Dibbit. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so honestly, our biggest thing is we sell options or reservations for any events that could happen in the future. So, we hope to expand to a variety of different things. Anytime there is a tournament where there's a demand and, something is contingent upon happening, that's where we come in, where we can sell something that may or may not happen and, give fans peace of mind. So, we hope to expand in the future, but right now we're focusing mainly on this college football playoff reservation.
Rob Boaz is the COO of Dibbit and the College Football Playoff RSVP program. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Bram. Really appreciate it.
That will do it for us this week. Remember, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3 Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3 Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.